This next phase, that's when your brain's concentrated, it's focused, it's ready for action. So that's good if we can get kids' brains. That's the goal, is to get kids into a better state. These are just some assessments that we do. In our practice, we use some assessments to look at where your child's or even a new patient's nervous system is at. So on the bottom is a kid who first came in, a classical ADHD kid. So on the left is the EMG, it's a muscle scan. It's looking at the tension of the muscles in your body. And we can see this kid's got the reds and greens and blues. They're muscles which are overly tight and tense. And then a few months later, above that, we can see that the tension levels are reduced. They're sort of looking less angry. The second one is the balance of the muscles. So that hasn't changed much. And then the last one is a thermal scan. That's like a temperature scan of the skin of your spine, and that shows you where your autonomic nerves are pinched or irritated or angry. So you can see there's some improvements there. There's still some real stuff happening in upper neck, which is often the main area that we'll be finding in ADHD kids, is the upper neck, because obviously that's the closest to the brain of any part of your spine. Here's another ADHD kid. The first kid actually has Asperger's, but he was actually recently reassessed by the psychologist, and they've now said he no longer has Asperger's, he only has ADHD now, whereas he used to have both, according to the psychologist at the school. But his mother actually puts that change down to his adjustments, because it's the only thing that's changed. Like, we've got studies of this kid over his entire school career, and for some reason in the last 12 months, these symptoms of Asperger's have disappeared. He's still got some characteristic stuff with ADHD. This next scan is the same. You're seeing the same sort of patterns in the muscle scan. On the left there, you're seeing muscles that are tense, tight, and still happening in the second one, perhaps even a little bit worse. But you can see across to the right, the thermal scan, you can see dramatic improvements in the irritation of his autonomic nervous system. So it's good to have that sort of technology, because we can literally measure and see. Like, parents will often say, how am I going to know whether this is working? And it's good to have something that's a little bit impartial, it's quite objective, and we can literally measure the changes that's happening. And usually the changes in the behaviour are usually proportionate. So if we have a kid and we're not seeing big changes on their assessment, then usually they're not showing big changes in their ADHD. Whereas when you see big changes in the assessment, you usually see big changes in their ADHD. So it's nice to have something that kind of is a bit of an impartial judge there. So as I said, chiropractic is probably something you do need to think about with helping to manage these kids. Auricular therapy that I mentioned before is basically modernised ear acupuncture. Years ago in France, a researcher started looking at ear acupuncture, and the first thing he discovered when he was looking at the ear, those charts of the meridians, the Chinese lines that are all over the body? There's actually none on the ear. So he rang up the college in Beijing of acupuncture, and he said, look, I've started studying ear acupuncture, and I was wondering why you put needles in the ear when there's no meridians. And the head of the college said, well, we don't actually know. It just seems to work. So he then went on and researched that, and what he found was that there's a very rich supply of cranial nerve and cervical nerve endings in your ear, and what they found was when they started stimulating different points on the ear with electrical currents, they could literally see different sections of the brain lighting up and activating and turning off and turning on. And so it was almost like they discovered this little street directory, or this little terminal to the brain. So we know that we can increase endorphins, we can stimulate opiates, we can get serotonin being released in the brain by using auricular therapy. So once again, we can try to tap into some of the chemistry of the brain to try and get the brain working a bit more normally. This is just a diagram showing how auricular therapy works. This is from Terry Ollison's text. He's sort of the #1 expert in auricular therapy in the USA. Just basically showing how you're stimulating different points on the ear, up on the top right there, which then go up into the brain, which then activate different points in the body. But obviously with ADHD, we're really trying to just stimulate the parts of the brain. We're not even so much worried about what's going on in the body. It's almost like there's a little mini map of your body. If you turned yourself upside down and put a picture of yourself in your ear, that's literally how your body is mapped on your earlobe. Similar to reflexology, there's a lot of different systems which use similar concepts. This is Dr. Jay Holder. He's one of my personal mentors, and he's developed a lot of the modalities in terms of auricular therapy. And on the right there is the the specialist chiropractic technique that we use more of nowadays too, which is using an instrument to do adjustments instead of your old-fashioned stretching, manipulative sort of treatment, which we can still do, but particularly for kids with ADHD, we find that this works particularly well. Dr. Holder's got a 350-bed addiction rehab facility in Miami in the USA, and basically, does a lot of work with ADHD and these sorts of problems. So he's one of the foremost experts, and he's a chiropractor, so he gives us a lot of our information. Remember how we said we could use EEG to assess the way the brain's working? You can also use EEG as a treatment, and it's called biofeedback. Now what this does is the kids are basically watching a computer game, and they're kind of using their brain while they're on an EEG to try and manipulate things that are going on the screen. So remember how we talked about those different brain waves? What happens is, if you can get your brain consciously into the right brain wave, then there's for example, there could be a little bird that's flying, okay? And if you're in alpha, then the bird will keep flying. If you go into theta mode and you're going into daydream mode, the bird just collapses and falls to the ground. Whereas if you go into beta mode, then the bird flies off to the sun and blows up. So you can literally play these little computer games, and as long as your brain's in the right brainwave, the bird keeps flying, and the goal is to get the little birdie to the destination. So what this is doing is it's training the child or even the adult to consciously get themselves into that brainwave, so that then when they go to school, when they go to a social setting, hopefully they can they can mimic or they can recreate that brainwave. Very costly treatment. Usually, a lot of treatments are required, but if you're really pulling your hair out and wondering what you can do apart from medicate, then this is definitely something to look into. I think there's a place locally here in Leopold that offers these services. Parenting school, you can look at courses. There used to be courses in Geelong run through Bethany. They're currently not running them. They're in a bit of a problem with their employees at the moment. So as soon as they get more people coming in to train, they'll be running more of these sorts of schools. So literally courses that teach you, just the fundamentals of parenting, and perhaps even some different strategies. Obviously there's books you can read, like Steve Bedell and those sorts of books. Lots of books out there that give you information about being a better parent, so to speak. So, teaching you how to manage behaviour, teaching you how to set limits effectively, giving you, strategies and alternatives to try with your child, helping you to deal with the kid's emotions, maintaining a positive approach for yourself and in front of the kid, because as soon as you start dropping the bundle, then, it gets harder and harder for the kids. How to find support, is there support groups, are there people that can help you? And then there's other courses they run. There's Raising Boys, which is obviously characteristic because ADHD seems to be more in boys. Ups and downs of fathering, some of us need help as being fathers, and exploring together. So there's different courses you can look at in different places to help you. So Nick's golden rule number 4 is boys need men. This is a key. We see this a lot. It's actually proven that the children of single mums, they're not actually more likely to have ADHD, but they're more likely to be diagnosed with ADHD. So it is key that, if you are a single mum or if you, are affected by this, where there's really only a female influence in the boy's life, then make sure they've got some sort of male influence. So whether it's a male teacher, in the classroom, whether it's an uncle or a stepfather or a grandfather, you need to find mentors and idols almost for these boys to model themselves on, because sometimes that's one of the issues is how they're modelling themselves. They have a bit of an identity crisis. Nick's golden rule number 5 is keep mum happy. Research shows that postnatal depression increases the risk of a child later having ADHD. So as it says, the kids are asleep, let's go to Europe. But, you've got to make sure that mum's relaxed, mum's happy, mum's rewarded as well. And that's difficult when you're dealing with these kids, isn't it? It's like this battle that's going on where you're looking after yourself and you're also having to nurse or care for this child at the same time. And Nick's golden rule number 6 is your child actually gifted? They've actually found with research that quite a lot of these kids actually do have higher than normal IQs. And